Does history repeat itself? That's the question that many Washington County residents will ask themselves probably over the next several weeks. As we start looking toward the late spring rains, the flooding in certain areas, Florida Department of Transportation already pumping water at the Blue Lake area. If you recall, last year in the midsummer, we actually had parts of Highway 77 closed for several weeks due to flooding conditions. When we come back, we're going to look at some of these situations, some of the problems that we may be facing relatively soon. We'll be right back. The Washington County Emergency Operations Center recently issued a warning about torrential downpour and heavy thunderstorms over the next several days. We're already full, and as Tommy Barfield pointed out last year, if you're already full and we get more rain, something's got to give. In this case, there's just inadequate outfall areas for this rain and subsequent overflow water to go, and so we end up with the inability to access certain properties and road closings. As Tommy Barfield, Secretary of the Department of Transportation in Chipley, explained to us in a conversation last year, the proposed four-laning project, which is hopefully soon to come here in Chipley, will take care of much of this outfall problem. If we look at the Blue Lake area, it's lapping at the parking lot already, and it's not going to take much more rain before we see potential shutdown of the road as we did last summer. Here at the intersection of State Park Road and Highway 77, just south of I-10 in Chipley, you'll see that there's in excess of a half mile of this 5-inch rigid pipe. Now, this was laid down sometime late on Friday by the Department of Transportation, and hats off to them for being aggressive and proactive in anticipation of what could be another repeat of last summer's flooding. At this point, there appears to be only one pump running, and it is running 24 hours a day. Now, this operation started sometime on Friday, 2 days ago, and the Department of Transportation, to their credit, has been aggressive and proactive in anticipation of a repeat of last year's flooding and the closure, more importantly, of Highway 77. If you're a regular commuter on Highway 77 in Chipley, you remember last year's flooding and the subsequent closure of the road. Lots of heartburn. We're here at the intersection right now of State Park Road and Highway 77. This is the point at which people who were traveling northbound had to proceed east and take a roundabout circuitous pathway to avoid the flooded area. At the end of the day, it wasn't as bad as it could be. However, if you were heading simply to I-10, which is just a half mile up the road here, it was a several mile journey just to get to I-10. The Department of Transportation many times takes a hit for their action or inactions, and it's very easy to be an armchair quarterback. Frankly, our hats are off to the Department of Transportation for being proactive and aggressive in anticipation of the flooding to come in the next several days, and we certainly don't want another closure of Highway 77. Here at the boat landing at Blue Lake on Highway 77, just south of I-10, the ducks are having a ball, but as this rain threat increases and the water continues to rise, we can't help but wonder if Highway 77 is endangered as it was last summer. Now, if you recall, even after the waters receded last year, the Department of Transportation continued to keep the road closed until the substrate or the surface under the road was somewhat dry. We can't help but think, because of the high levels of water here over the last few weeks, that water has already permeated that subsoil below the road, and it's not going to take a whole lot for the Department of Transportation to again close this road. Now, to their credit, this is simply the Department of Transportation being proactive in hopefully avoiding damage to the road and obviously cost to the taxpayer. It's easy to complain about a little inconvenience when a road is closed, but how much greater will those cries of woe be when you're hit for tax increases because we have to resurface some of these roads? Now, some of these roads are have some age on them, and all of them are as well kept up as our state budget allows, but at the end of the day, we all shoulder the burden of the cost of that construction, repair, and upkeep of these roads. So hats off to the Department of Transportation for being proactive and trying to save us some tax money. If you're a regular traveler of Highway 77 here in Chipley, you've noticed that over the last several months, the waters have been inordinately high here at Blue Lake. You're looking behind us here now. The ducks are loving it, but it's not going to take much for that water to encroach on the parking area, and the road surface for Highway 77 is not much higher in elevation. If you followed our stories last year, you saw that the Washington County Health Department and the Health Department for the state of Florida, in fact, posted warnings not to consume products coming out of these waters and certainly not to do any recreational sporting activities in these waters because of the encroachment of the contents of local septic tanks and sewage systems. Even the products found along the road, the surface oils, petroleum products, and all of the flotsam and jetsam entering these waters was not a healthful situation. Nonetheless, we saw people in here fishing, and obviously fishing was very good for a while there. There was certainly more food for the fish due to the contents of these septic tanks, but one would have to question if that was prudent from a health point of view. We're here right now in front of the Blue Lake Community Center, the fate of which is still up in the air for a small rural county like Washington, already burdened with inordinate expenses and a budget which is certainly a challenge. Blue Lake is probably not the highest of priorities. Now, if you recall last year when the floods came, Blue Lake was literally underwater. Subsequent to the flood, when the waters receded enough to do so, county employees came down, removed much of what was inside the building. Since that time, there have been some tests done. There have been some evaluations. At this point, no hard and clear path of where we go from here. There's been suggestions made that the building simply be torn down or that it be converted to an open gazebo. Certainly there are concerns and questions about mold and mildew and hazardous materials and conditions. Obviously, when the flooding came, the contents of nearby septic tanks entered these waters, and these waters subsequently lapped into the building as well as every place else around here. So one has to question the health risks possibly in the building. But it is a shame because this building was one of the few places that civic groups and organizations could have meetings and parties and events. So if you have an interest in this, perhaps you should talk to your county commissioner, whichever district may represent you, and let them know your feelings. Certainly this building was an asset to the community for many years, and hopefully will be again going forward. It's Sunday, April 6th, and we're out here getting bit by mosquitoes at Blue Lake. The conditions have been great for the ducks and for some of the insect population, not so good for people. And over the next several days, conditions are expected to worsen. Now, the Emergency Operations Center of Washington County has issued severe thunderstorm warnings with the possibility of road closings and flash floods. So be sure to stay tuned to your local news, weather. You can go to the website of the Washington County Emergency Operations, find out all of their most recent postings as far as warnings and advisories. You can follow us on Facebook at Real Florida Magazine, or you can find us online at realfloridamagazine.org. Stay up to date with everything going on. I dare say that you'll find a little bit more comprehensive and in-depth coverage from us than you will the typical media. We don't depend on advertising to fund our efforts. We are simply a part of the engaged community, want to let you know what's going on. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.